Hello everyone, welcome to the second of Huawei HCIP OpenELR certification course. In this section, we will continue to learn the OpenELR cluster architecture. Now that we have fully explained LVS, let's talk about another cluster deployment tool, Nginx.
This section describes the load balancer, Nginx. When serving as a load balancer, Nginx can provide Layer 4 and Layer 7 agents. In actual working scenarios, LVS is used as a Layer 4 load balancer, and Nginx is mainly used as a Layer 7 load balancer. Therefore, this section we will describe only the Layer 7 load balancing function of Nginx. Nginx also uses multiple algorithms, such as the round-robin algorithm and wait algorithm. The round-robin algorithm is the same as the RR algorithm in LVS, and the wait algorithm is the same as the WRR algorithm in LVS. The load balancing configuration of the Nginx is implemented by the upstream configuration module. Here is a case. Using upstream is define the load balancer and set the algorithm used for the load balancing. Also, we can use server to define different backend RS. In this case, we can see that there are multiple backend RS. When defining RS, you can directly use the IP address or domain name of the service. The latter is recommended. At the same time, we can see that different configurations are added to the backend of the server when the RS is defined. For example, wait equals to 5 is set behind the first server, and backup is added to the last two servers. And also, we will introduce this in the following slides. First, we will introduce the common algorithm of Nginx. And the first one is round-robin algorithm, which is the default Nginx algorithm and works in the same mode as the RR in LVS. The second is LC, which is the least connection scheduling. It works in the same mode as the LC of the LVS. Next one, IP hash selects a proper server based on the hash value of the source address. Its working mode is similar to that of the LVS SH. Generic hash is another load balancing algorithm based on hash value calculation supported by Nginx. The hash object is a user-defined key, which can be a text variable or text-width variable. When Nginx functions as a Layer 7 load balancing algorithm, the administrator sends different URIs and ports to different services. After the generic hash algorithm is used, requests with the same URI will be forwarded to the same server. The last algorithm we need to learn is random. In this algorithm, a backend server is randomly assigned to respond to the client request. If the option 2 is added to the algorithm, two servers are randomly assigned to respond to the request. Let's look at the option used when defining RS for the server field, such as wait, backup, and so on. The first one, max connection, indicates the maximum number of connections to the server to be loaded. When the number of connections reaches the maximum number, subsequent requests will not be forwarded to the server. And then down indicates that the server in the down state, that is, the server is manually removed from the cluster and subsequent requests will not be forwarded to the server. Backup indicates that the current server is in the backup state. Requests are forwarded to the server only when other servers are unavailable. And max fields and field timeout are used for health checks. Max fields indicates the number of times that the Nginx fails to send requests to the backend server. The default value is 1. If the request fails once, the Nginx is within the period specified by fail timeout. Requests will not be forwarded to this server. After the fail timeout period expires, Nginx attempts to forward new requests to the server. If the fault persists, Nginx does not forward requests to the server within the fail timeout period. The slow start command is used during the health check. If a server in the cluster is waiting for fail timeout, the Nginx does not immediately forward requests to the server after detecting that the server recovers. Instead, the Nginx waits for the time specified by slow start before forwarding requests to the server. In addition, slow start is currently only available in the commercial version. And besides this, notice that not all algorithms can be set with all options. For example, in generic hash algorithm, the backend server does not allow any option. After configuring the load balancer, you need to configure the reverse proxy function of the Nginx so that the load balancer can work properly. We will learn the reverse proxy process before, and here we will review it. From this picture, we can see, first, a client sends a request to Nginx, and after receiving the request from the client, Nginx forwards it to a backend server. The backend server returns the request resources to Nginx, and finally, Nginx returns the resources to the client. Actually, Nginx supports proxy for multiple protocols, such as HTTP, HTTPS, and TCP. In addition, in the reverse proxy workflow, the port used by the client to request the resources from the proxy can be different from the port used by the server to provide services. For example, the client uses port 80 to send requests to the proxy, but the server uses port 8080 to provide resources for the reverse proxy. The location module is used to configure the reverse proxy of the Nginx. This configuration has two key configurations. One defines the URL of location, and the other is the URL defined in proxy path. They interact with each other and eventually form a complete URL. The URL in location is used to match the URL sent by the user. If the matching is successful, the request is forwarded to proxy path. For example, if the administrator defines the URL as /test, the request sent by the user must contain the /test field. For example, 3w.openelr.com/test. Such requests will be forwarded to proxy path. Otherwise, they will be rejected. After the request is forwarded to proxy path processes the forwarded URL again to form a complete URL. Then there are two actions, retain or not retain the matched content. If the URL in proxy path ends with a /, the matched content is not retained when a new URL is combined. If the URL in proxy path does not end with a /, the matching content is retained when a new URL is combined. For example, if a user sends a request http 192.168.1.123/test/index.html, and the URL of location is sent to /test, the request will be matched and forwarded to proxy path. If the URL of location is set to /test1, the request cannot be matched, and the request will be rejected. When the request is forwarded to proxy path, if the URL of proxy path is set to http 192.168.1.123/, the matching /test is deleted and only /index.html is left. So the final URL is 1.123//index.html. If the URL of proxy path is set to 1.123, the matching part is retained. The generate URL is 1.123/test/index.html. Okay, so finally, let's take a case study of Nginx load balancing and the reverse proxy practice.
This section describes the load balancing function and algorithm of Nginx, the reverse proxy function of Nginx, and the configuration methods of load balancing and reverse proxy. In the next section, we will introduce the third cluster deployment tool, HA Proxy. Thank you for watching.